G'day everyone, welcome back to another weekly tipping video on the channel. Going to be going over my tips for round 16, the final bye round finally of this AFL season. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do come in to enjoy today's video. And let's get straight into it. Let's just quickly go over my tips from round 15. It wasn't a great week for tipping myself. I got a 4 out of 7. The tips I did do went with the Dockers over the Dons, a convincing win in the end. Backed in the Cats like many others, but credit if you did tip the Lions. They just went to school a wee bit on the Cats, blitzed them off the turnover and defended really well. Felt North could get up for this game, but I just didn't have the guts to tip him, and there you go. The Kangas probably should have won this game by 40 odd points. They just belted him in the middle, and of course a lot of negativity's been said about the Blues at this minute. Went with Port Adelaide, just didn't have the confidence back in the Swans, but a full team back in. They're now starting to walk taller a little bit, and yeah, the connection is starting to show a little bit more as well. And then for Saturday night, went with the Pies over the Saints, as I did predict. Felt this game would be close, but Collingwood would run away with it, and that's what we saw. The Giants, pretty fortunate tip here. Gold Coast, what a choke, should have won this game. And the Dogs, a pretty easy tip over the Tigers. A quick look now, my tipping competition leaderboard update. Just the two people, Regan, 𝐼𝐿𝐴 and Lion Fred, that got themselves a full 7 out of 7 score. And as for who is leading my competition, it is a two-way tie at the minute. ESPN Fan and Ronald's Raffles with a total score of 111. Let's now begin with the tips for round 16. We start on the Thursday night. Port Adelaide taking on the Blues at the Adelaide Oval. Two teams probably not in the mix for the top 8, and there's been plenty of talk about both these teams, especially the Blues. Just a lack of desire, lack of hunt in that midfield. What on earth has happened with their inside game this season? That's their own dominant strength, and they're getting beat by oppositions left, right and centre in that area this season. And yeah, they got bullied in the middle against North Melbourne, and you can see just the lack of cohesion issues and a lot of morale problems too, and star players like 𝐼𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐴 and Cripps just looking a bit banged up at the minute, not at the peak of their powers. So definitely the crap has hit the fan quite a bit for these Blue Baggers. So usually with how it works, when a team is slated by the press and so much negativity is built up on them, usually the next game they play a bit better. So I think this one will be close, and they should be able to respond back and just bring a bit more intensity and a bit more desire with how they do play. Against Port Adelaide, they did knock off Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval last year, but this is when they were in a bit of form and Port Adelaide were a bit shaky. And look, Port Adelaide are definitely gettable. Look what the Swans did to them. They brought some elite pressure and really stifled their ball movement. Port, the past 2 weeks before that Swans game, was now starting to get a bit of speed on their transition and catching out teams with some of that quick ball movement. So can they bring that back and bounce back in that area? So yeah, expecting a bit of a response from the Blues. I think this game will be close, but just think Port Adelaide at home is the safer way to go here. They'll get back in 𝐼𝐿𝐴 for this game, returning from injury, pairing him up with 𝐼𝐿𝐴. They'll look a bit more sounder defensively, you'd think. The absence was pretty evident against the Swans, and also Jack Lukosius finally comes back. He's a good field kick. Could he impact a bit forward of centre? So yeah, I just think Port at home, the team to go with here, and the Blues off the back of a loss to North Melbourne. It just has to be better, but don't have the confidence on going with the tip. So I'll go Port Adelaide in this one. In a fairly close game, I'll go Port by 15. Friday night footy, we have the Swans taking on the Western Bulldogs at the SCG. I tell you what, with players back in now, probably their best performance of the season last week against Port Adelaide. They just looked connected with how they moved the ball. And that's an issue I've been saying with Sydney all season long. The synergy issues they're having, the ability to move the ball out of the back half has been very poor. So yeah, they've got, I think, everything really well down pat against Port Adelaide. And yeah, their pressure's been fairly good for most of the season, so has their contested numbers. Well, they could now start to build a bit, but how will they go against the Bulldogs? We all talk about the Dogs being that flat track bully side, but let's remember 2 weeks ago, with their win against the Saints, that was the first time Bontempelli and Sam Darcy both played with each other. So I think now, with their probably 2 most important players in the team, can they now start to build and knock off a bit more, I guess, credible opponents? Sydney are a side in form. As we all know, the SCG built more of that compacted ground, so with the Dogs' ability to win it well on the inside, they can get a lot of repeat entries and just sit on top of Sam Darcy. He's changing games in the minute. But hey, Tom McCartan's been in good form. He could somewhat limit him in a way. It's very hard to do that, but you'd think Sam Darcy, no matter who he's playing on, will make an impact. As I said in my power rankings video, I think some sides have been able to get the Dogs a little bit on the inside game. They have been gettable there, usually against the weaker midfield teams. Sides have been able to, the Dogs have been able to smash up on them. But Sydney, they've been a fairly good contested side this year. I think this game will be one in the midfield a wee bit because both sides can move the ball really well. I think the Dogs' ability to get the ball from the inside to outside with those quick hands is some of the best in the competition too. And it's what's hurt Sydney in the past. Remember, they belted them in their CG last year too off that. Tricky one to go with here. Sydney are in a bit of form. I think this is generally a very winnable game for them, but just I think with the assets the Dogs have in that forward half, and it's usually a midfield group Sydney tend to struggle against with Bontempelli, and you know Richard's been outstanding. Liberatore thrown in there a wee bit as well. So I'll go with the Bulldogs in this one. I think just overall looking like a bit of that better team. But hey, I tell you what, the Swans did look like a different team a wee bit against Port Adelaide, so I wouldn't be surprised if they win this game here, but I expect the Dogs probably be a bit too good in that midfield battle, so I'll go the Doggies in this one, and I'll tip them here by 13. For the Saturday games now, first one up we have the Suns taking on the D's at People's First Stadium. Gold Coast coming off the back of a disappointing loss. They've now lost 3 games in a row, and the D's coming off their bye with also 3 losses in a row, so both teams you could say, with how they have played, definitely due for a win. The Suns have been very close in some games, especially that game against GWS. So they should have probably won it by 30 or 40 points. But as I said in my power rankings video, I think the little things and the little bad habits are starting to creep up on them a little bit. You have 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 go for that soccer kick, completely misses it. They concede out the back. They're looking a bit shaky defensively in those as games do grow on. And Jed Walter's set shot as well. Just those little things I'm noticing a wee bit. They're slipping away a little bit with the conversion per inside 50 I'm noticing as well. But look, Gold Coast, their midfield group is some of the best in the competition, and it's what belted GWS for the majority of that game. But it will be interesting. The Demons are also a very credible midfield, but their issue has definitely been their ability to score well. Their conversion's been poor, but they can gain plenty of clearance, but they just can't score enough from that area. So they're getting a lot of entries. They're doing a lot right. So given it's the Suns at home, I expect them to probably win this game of football. Look, hard to go against the Suns. I think they could be a bit too good in that midfield. And look, they spread really well from contest to contest, and that could outdo the D's a wee bit at home as well. But I'm going to go Melbourne. I think, yeah, you've always got to go with an upset tip. And I think the D's due for a win. So is the Suns, to be fair. But I'm going with Melbourne. I think, yeah, they'll find a way to pinch this one against the Suns. So we'll go Melbourne in this one by 10 points. Then at 4:15 p.m, we do have the Hawks taking on the 𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 at 𝐸𝐻𝐻 Stadium. So Hawthorn, obviously, a bit of a fortress they build down there in Launceston, or Launceston, however you do say it. People tell me it's this. I can always forget. But yeah, the Hawks coming off their bye. A bit of a fortuitous win against the Crows. They probably should have been down a wee bit by 30 or 40 points at half-time, but it was a credit to them. They really turned things around after half-time and just responded in the midfield where they were getting well beat in that area in that first half. But off the bye, how will they fare? Some teams can be a bit lethargic coming off their bye, and the 𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐻, they're a side in form and just hungry with how they're playing. As I've said in my tipping videos, their midfield has been very impressive, and throughout phases of games, they can just turn a game on its head and really gain a bit of momentum. Parker and Simpkin has been huge in that midfield the last few weeks. Sheezel's now starting to impact a lot more forward of centre. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 has been quality at half-back. So, yeah, individual players are now in some good form, and they're looking a lot more connected as a team as well. Pink's been pretty good defensively too. Probably was at the expense of how poor the Blues looked, but geez, they looked dangerous when they went inside 50 North Melbourne. They looked deadly at ground level in their forward 50. They just won so many of those key contests. Curtis had plenty of shots on goal as well. And can they just wreak a bit of havoc for this Hawthorn side, where they've looked a bit vulnerable on the inside sometimes and a bit defensively too. But look, I want to see to believe it with North Melbourne. I'm intrigued. Could they win 2 games in a row here? But Hawthorn down at Tassie, a team that's just hard to go against. And look, coming off the bye, they might be a little bit lethargic. But look, if they have a poor first half, we've seen it against that win they had against the Crows. You'd expect them to turn things around and respond in whatever era they need to respond in. So yeah, I think the Hawks probably outdo the 𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐻 here with a bit of their ball movement. They've been pretty good in that area this year, the Hawks. So I go Hawthorn in this one, and yeah, they'll surge away and win this one by 18. We have the Pies taking on the Eagles at Marvel Stadium. Collingwood, league leaders versus the West Coast Eagles. bottom of the ladder. But as we've been saying with West Coast, they're starting to build a little bit now. They are being a thorn in some good team sides throughout patches of games. Started really well against the Crows. They were looking really good off the turnover against the Cats for 3 quarters, but just, faded out of that game. And they should have beaten North Melbourne by a couple of goals, let's be real here. And after that poor first quarter against the Blues, they won all the remaining quarters. So they're now starting to build a little bit, linking up a lot better with their ball movement and transition, I am noticing. So how they fare here against the Pies? Maybe they shock them for a quarter or two, but I don't really need to spend much time with this tip, to be honest. Collingwood are clearly the best team in the competition, and when sides push them, no matter who it is, they just find a way to surge and just have a 5-minute period where they put on a bit of a score. They're looking dangerous at ground level in their forward 50, moving it fairly well, just looking like the complete package at the minute, Collingwood. So, yeah, I think this one will be a convincing win, no doubt, coming up for the Pies, and we'll go Collingwood in this one by 60 points. Sunday games now. First night, we do have the Tigers taking on the Crows at the MCG. Richmond, their past 2 games has been a bit disheartening for those Tigers supporters, but you do have to remember, I think their age and experience is now starting to take effect a bit on the squad. Some younger and tired bodies out there. A lot of dirty ball and poor conversion going inside 50 has definitely affected them a bit. A lot of unrewarded efforts I'm noticing a bit with this Tigers side. But the Crows coming off their bye. Still, you'd think you'll have a bit of fire in the bellies with dropping that game before their bye against Hawthorn. Their first half was excellent, but they just couldn't buy a goal in those tricky conditions. You give them a mulligan, though. It was pretty awful conditions for football. You only play there once as the away team of the Crows. But yeah, Adelaide, we saw it at the MCG back at the start of the year. They just blitzed the Dons off the turnover, and their ball movement looked the best it was for most of that for most of the year. And so since we've seen that past data, you'd think here against the Tigers, they find a way to win this game well. But Richmond, we've seen some crazy things with the Tigers this season. I think they're now due for a bit of a good block, perhaps, where they now start to get a bit of consistency together. They start off games really well. Sometimes they do throughout this season, but just their inability to play 4 quarters or bring the pressure for 4 quarters has definitely been one of their more bigger issues. So, yeah, maybe Richmond take it up to them for a half, but I expect Adelaide just more of a mature and professional and just damaging side when you look at the players on paper too. Keys in sensational form, and of course their 3 keys always find a way to get it done. So yeah, Adelaide just be too strong here, I think, against the Tigers and win this one well by 38 points. Final game of the round, we do have the Dockers taking on the Saints at Optus Stadium over in Perth. Fremantle, they are looking really good at the minute. The past 5 games, they've won all 5, and yeah, I had them at 5th in my power rankings. I reckon they're a team you just got to give your flowers to. They are looking at times a bit vulnerable, like they almost fell apart and choked a bit against North Melbourne, but I'm noticing a bit this year the Dockers are starting to be a bit better in those key moments or crunch moments of games. Just finishing games off well is a critical importance for them, given they did bundle out of the top 8 last year. And against the Saints, just always an enigma team. They're currently in the bottom 4, but you never know with the Saints. Could they put a bit of an upset here on the Dockers? I think with some people, they'll say, look, Fremantle due for a loss. So could the Saints come into Perth and win this game? It just wouldn't shock me. I thought for 3 quarters, they looked very good against the Pies. They're winning that ground level game. I thought they did well to sort of mitigate Collingwood's ball movement from that back half a wee bit. And there's some of their ball movement look pretty good too. So, oh geez, could they maybe beat up Fremantle here around the football? I think that's the key source for the Saints. Set up well behind the ball, but just win that hard ball on the inside and gain territory off that. There's that little part of me that says the Saints could really win this game of footy, but the Dockers at home, it's just tough to go against them here. Some sides like North have really taken up to them, and I thought the Dons started fairly decently against the Dockers too. But with 5 wins in a row, another home game here, the Dockers are in some really good form. I'll back them in here. 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐺𝐵 perhaps goes on to Caleb Strong. He's been brilliant the last 2 weeks, but Brayshaw can definitely hurt you in that midfield too with his running power. 𝐼𝐴𝐺𝐵 probably comes back in, but Jackson, you'd think, will continue to play a bit of that on the ball role, then float forward. Feeling the Dockers can really blitz the Saints through their transition game. It's been a really good area of their game the past 5-6 weeks or so when they have been now on the build. So Fremantle at home, I think they'll be too strong here for the Saints, but don't think an upset is out of the question here, but I'll back in the Dockers here. Expect them to be too good in the midfield as well. We'll go Fremantle in this one by 18 points. So everybody, there are my tips for round 16 of the 2025 AFL season. Let me know your tips down below in the comments section. Are you going to be going with any upsets? They do feel like fairly straightforward tips, but there's always upsets. We did tip all the favourites last week and look how we went, so I think there could be a few on the cards. But that's it from me, everybody. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did go to enjoy today's video. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, Bulldogs.